So good morning to Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole or Sharon or Cole. Whatever you want to refer to me, doesn't matter. And my middle name is Renee. A little quick story here. When I was born, my mom actually wanted my middle name to be Rene with an apostrophe, like sort of a French-ish version of Renee. And when they brought back the form, this is the old days, this is back in 1970, and it was in Delaware. And I don't know what hospital, I'm guessing the Wilmington Hospital back then. And when they brought back the form for her to sign off on, say, the birth certificate or whatever, they spelled it okay. They put Renee. And for some reason, she probably had it at that point because she was probably bullied by a bunch of bully nurses, or nobody could get anything right. And sometimes people don't get things right on purpose. And it's hard to prove because people are like, oh, come on, that's not true. They probably didn't realize because most people spell it with two E's and blah, blah, blah. Well, and those people will be collaborating with the bullies. It depends. You never know. Because it could have put my mom in a state of mind where she just started getting used to people never really doing the right thing, always kind of messing up on purpose. So she left it because she didn't want to make a big deal of it. It meant they would have to do the paperwork all over again. I don't know where my dad was in the process, and maybe they just decided, whatever, we'll just leave it Renee. So anyway, that would come up later. Before I got hit in 2011, I would talk to someone whose name, oddly, is Sharon Allman, and her middle name is like Rena or something like that. So it's very close. And I brought it up because I was like, oh, Rena, my mom said she was going to give me the middle name Renee with just one E and an accent. And she's like, oh, gee, thanks, to whomever, the hospital staff or for a mom who didn't work hard enough. Some people might imply that my mom should have stood up, but she probably was tired of having to correct people. And if you start standing up for yourself so much or calling people out so much, all of a sudden you become a real pain and a pill. Do you see how that works? If my mom were to call out every single person who did her wrong, she would then look like a complainer, a pill of, someone in the community who's become a real agitator because she's calling us out on every single little thing. So you sort of have to walk this fine line. Because what happened to me sort of blew everything out of the water. I'm sort of the pill for certain people. But for people who are basically good people, they would be like, I'd be screwing my head off too. Like I would, I think I would go totally crazy because of what happened. So anyway, so a little quick story there. Today is day 72 on my one video each day, 365-day campaign, raising money for life loss, soul beaten, battered, and bruised, but God loves me. And I know I'm among the favored, and I don't care how that sounds. I'm not even like overly religious in terms of showing up to an organized religion or institutionalized church or anything like that. No offense to those folks, because I know there are good people out there. But in my case, wherever I go, they show up, whatever it is. So it doesn't matter. I show up to a church and all of a sudden they'll have a smattering of new people filing in to sort of make life uncomfortable. I don't know what it is. It's just it's sort of like, so I don't want to place blame in any one direction, but say you grow up in a community where drugs were introduced and say certain people wound up having a little bit of an issue there. It's like a spider web of criminals will come around and make life miserable for everybody. Or we could go back to 1970 and bully nurses or people in the community. And there might be a spider web that began before drugs even showed up. So there might be people who dispatched their little spawn throughout the United States. In fact, I was looking last night, and I'll get to the point of this video because it's about Cosmic Cafe. But last night I was trying to decide, like, whenever I move on, because I don't know that I'll stay in Philadelphia forever, because this city is a dying city. I actually do believe that. They have residences growing, but it's kind of an illusion. I see a lot of bad stuff going on around here. I see a lot of immaturity. I see a lot of people who believe something and they're just not sort of being taught or educated to know that that's not how you treat people and it's better to be a different way. It's just, whatever. But I was looking around to decide where I might go, and it dawned on me that there might be people who are part of a certain community dating back to the 60s and early 70s. And it's like, well, I don't want to live there because I think so-and-so might live in that neck of the woods. So I don't want to be anywhere where I know certain people could potentially be related to a certain spider web that started in the 60s and early 70s. And people like that will give the medical industry a bad name because there's a lot of good people in the medical industry. I go holistic as much as possible to prevent whatever I can do to control and prevent showing up in the hospital. Then I'm doing that as best as I can. And I feel like I've been trained to do that because whoever wanted to make sure I was on green juice for 4 years and then some and a raw vegan foodie doesn't like the medical industry. So, and it's because so many people get hired in that industry, and it's an industry where they have a lot of turnover and a lot of traveling people for a reason. Either you're one of the annoying ones or you're so annoying, they need to help people who are good be able to switch out. Okay, I'll stay here for 2 years, then I'll go because we know that there are people out there who harm people on purpose, and a high-paying job would be in the medical industry as, say, any type of nurse or any type of, and it can, the environment can get ugly very quickly, even in a caretaking world. And what a hypocrisy to call yourself a nurse and actually be part of a very annoying ring, almost like it would be like a criminal ring, and their job would be to annoy the hell out of people. And they might not look criminal on paper. It depends. But it's like, okay, I would move over here, but I kind of think someone might be living there who's related, and I don't want to wind up near their tentacles of destruction. And they get to look good. This is different than motorcycle rider, Harley Davidson people. That's a whole different world, other than drugs and your usual very easy to identify abuses. I would stay away from that. But there are people who aren't as easily identified as serious abusers. So with that, and we'll get into the quick rundown of things that went on. So I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment the fourth Monday of January 2011. It was really, really bad. I thought it was the last night of my life. All kinds of things went through my brain and everything that evening. And if that weren't enough, my mom and aunt's phone lines were cut. I tried to reach them the next day. Couldn't get through to them. I got, we're sorry, the phone number you're trying to reach has been disconnected. So it's like a horror film, if you will. What happened to me happened in the wee hours of the morning, like the witching hour, when most people are asleep and are either home from their late night restaurant ongoings or employment. But before the earliest, say like teachers or what have you would wake up to get ready to go to school, I was trying to figure out like who gets up the earliest, or contractors before they would get up and to get moving. So this was like 3:34 in the morning. And then, the games commenced after that. And every time I turned to people who I thought were newish friends or friends who I'd mingled with, gone to Christmas parties with or what have you, or holiday parties, what have you, they started acting strangely and inappropriately. And they didn't respond in supportive ways. Most people are like, oh my God, are you okay? What do you need? Like, well, we can do this, hopefully we can help you get through this, maybe come over for dinner. Hey, we're having dinner every Sunday night. You want to come over? Maybe that'll help. Nothing like that. So when somebody's in crisis, it does help for friends who are supportive to say, let's make it a set thing. We'll meet at least once a week for coffee, just so you feel supported. So there you go. That's what friends do. But anyway, non-friends will, oh gosh, I don't know. Oh my God. Do you think maybe, oh my gosh, do you think it's your perception or reality of what happened that somebody raped you? Do you think it's perception or reality that a whole bunch of people are, suddenly unavailable when they were available before? So anyway, that's what kicked off in 2011. In addition, we had epic record temperatures and snow that year. We had blizzards bigger and more productive or producing of snow. Since 1941, they had never seen such a thing. All kinds of things were going on. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. I dragged my sister up here first, and then I begged my mom to come up, which I would never do because I would never impose financially, basically. And also because my mom was aging, I wouldn't impose on her to fly up here. I would visit her. So it's a thing where for someone like me to actually beg someone to come up here, that's a major deal. I just don't do that. And I sort of am used to being independent and not really expecting people to do much, because finances always play a role and people are sort of limited in their ability to do things. So my mom and I split it. I charge it on a credit card, and then she kind of paid me half. Actually, I think I used her credit card. She gave me the numbers of her credit card, and then I paid her half. So we split it halfway, because I felt badly that I begged her to come up, and then she felt badly. She didn't want me to have to pay for all of it, but also she was relying on a very small Social Security check while living with her sister, who was able to be in a house because of her previous husband. So we have a lot of women here who had to rely on either each other or whatever husbands they've had. Most women have to rely on their husbands. So I know there are a few out there where, there are all kinds of situations, but in my family, aside from a couple people in Delaware, most the women would not be able to have the lifestyle that they have if it weren't for their husbands. And they seem to not really see that. They need to rely on their husband's input, either emotionally and or a paycheck wise. Everybody has a husband who has a contributing paycheck. So I sort of leave Delaware out of it in terms of my sister and her kids. They are the exception. We have cousins, step family, and everything else. And I would like to know what they would do if they were abandoned all of a sudden. So anyway, they don't really think about it. And I would like them to add up over the years how many people helped them to be able to live where they live. Because there's a lot of missing information there in terms of how many people sent a check to this person, or how many people helped co-sign on a house, or how many people, a lot. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today has to do with one of the bizarre situations, and there's like 72,000 layers of stuff that happened to me over the course of 8 years, which would explain why I might flip out every once in a while and yell down the street when I'm pissed off, basically. It's uncontrollable. If something were to happen, like say a dog humping my leg or what have you, and it's like I have to walk this dog, I need the money. I don't have a partner or a husband to sort of be there as a crutch. Then that'll set me off sometime. It depends on who's walking around, who notices, who makes a comment, who doesn't. So now I just walk around and privately record everything that I do. So not everything shows up on YouTube publicly. So anyway, point being, there were certain people who entered my life after this thing kicked off in 2011. And I kind of jokingly say that they were assigned to me as kind of like a support network to seem like they're kind of friends. That's how it felt, because I'm like, I don't know where these people came from or why they're willing to say, hey, you want to grab lunch, or you want to grab dinner, or do you want to go to this flea market, or what have you. So one of those people, I'll just say her name is Jen, because there are a million people named Jen out there. But I used to take care of a cat of hers, and she happened to know two other people who had befriended me, who lived in the Symphony House, a gay couple. They had lived in Houston for many years, and then they moved here. One of them was originally from Southern Delaware. The other one, I think, was originally from Houston. But they met in Houston, and Jen was actually from Houston. So somehow all these people from Houston showed up in my world. But they all lived in the Symphony House, and Jen went on and moved up to like Fishtown or Northern Liberties or what have you. She lived in both places. She kind of hopped around a lot, but in a wealthy-ish way. Like I would consider it wealthy. Other people would say it was mid-range, but most people can't afford what she can afford, as far as in my opinion. So anyway, she called me up and said, hey, wanted to know if you wanted to come with or meet up with myself. And she had met somebody, we'll just say Lance. She was hanging out with some guy named Lance. I don't know if they were dating or just really good friends. And they're having like a beer tasting or what have you, and wanted to know if you wanted to come along. So I was like, sure, why not? It was extremely rare that I was invited to do things. It would be like twice a year. So Dom and John from Symphony House, maybe twice, maybe 3 times would say, hey, do you want to grab dinner? I had like another friend who I met coffee with like once every 3 or 4 months. It sort of went like that. So anyway, I met with Jen and they had ridden their bikes up to Cosmic Cafe on Boathouse Row first, and the beer event was further up Boathouse Row, so it would be past like where the boat racing is, and all the way down to that far parking lot where a lot of people park. But it would have been like another mile and a half out. So met up there, and Jen and Lance were sitting down in front of Cosmic Cafe where we first met before we would ride all our bikes together from there. And at the Cosmic Cafe, there was a band playing, and it was sort of in the realm of folky music. And I would start to notice this at the Cosmic Cafe, that there would be bands that would perform there who literally on the fly would make up words, and it would just be just ridiculous music. Like, oh my God, I think I'm going to jump off a bridge, jump off a bridge, jump off a bridge. I think Sharon should jump off a bridge. I think she should jump out the window. I think, oh my gosh, did I just sing that? Oh my gosh, we don't mean that. Yes, we do. No, we don't. And someday the sunflower will come. Like, that is how ridiculous the music is and was. And I'm sitting there like, am I the only one who thinks that this is totally whack? Is it like made up? Is that a fake musician band there? Like, are these fake musicians and they're willing to sing something totally ridiculous? So I'm trying to ignore it like, okay, I don't know what they're singing, but I'll just try not to pay attention. And then Jen mentioned something to Lance, this guy that she's seeing, and I had parked my bike somewhere else because I was waiting for them to show up and I didn't know where they were or whatever. So she said something about, oh, I guess, we'll get all our bikes together. She said something and it went through my brain and it triggered something because the way she said it made it seem like I had a mental problem. Meanwhile, we have a band over here. I wish I had a recorder actually singing the most ridiculous lyrics ever. We think you all should now drink the Kool-Aid and then just lay down and die like Jonestown. You know what I mean? That's how bad it was. That bad. And we were this is Cosmic Cafe, and I'm wondering if it's named that for a reason. I know they had Cosmic over in West Philly. It's as if you're on another planet, like Satellite Cafe. It's in that realm. So, like, all of a sudden I was triggered because the way she worded something made it seem like, oh my gosh, well, I guess if you're mentally ill, you're affected by the music. And I hadn't said anything about the music. I just sort of was like, okay, I'll just, so anyway, but I might have like kind of quipped back with a comment. Like, I don't know what I said. It's been too many years, but I will automatically like say stuff back these days when I wouldn't have in the past. Cause I grew up being very introverted and nice and not knowing exactly how to like get back at people or to stick people, you know what I mean? So I had to learn that, or someone out there is like, we will have Sharon say this right now just to stick it back to that bitch. So anyway, I sort of had to just swallow my pride or my ego or I had no ego because this, and ride along on up with them to this beer tasting. The beer tasting was semi-okay. Lance had a nice conversation and I felt relieved for a while because I was able to engage and have a conversation with Lance that was a normal adult-ish conversation. There were like it wasn't that big of a beer tasting. There wasn't that many people there. So later I would wonder if they set it up on purpose just to make sure only like, say 70 people showed up at best, like 50 to 70. And it's quieter out there. It's farther away from the central Boathouse Row area and Lloyd Hall. Anyway, I did notice that Jen sort of was like, oh, everything's going fine. Like she kind of made a comment like, well, Sharon and Lance are getting along just famously and everything's fine. She wasn't like jealous or anything. It was more like, I almost felt as if she wanted us to look like children because we were able to have a conversation there in a quiet setting that I would consider normal and adult and civil and like the ideal situation. Like I actually was happy and was like, this is great. Everybody, we're being social. It's a normal conversation. There are no weird issues. No one's singing other than music. They would turn on music, and sometimes music will tie into your experience. So say I had been away from Philadelphia for a vacation or something before meeting up with them, a song that would have probably come on would have been, everybody needs a little time away. I heard you say from each other. They did do that when I visited my mom and dad separately, came back to Philly, and that song was playing in Rittenhouse Market. Rittenhouse Market is part of the landscape of movie making or CIA mind control, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. It is like the Truman Show, and a city could be laid out like a movie, kind of, but I don't want to peddle that out there because I find that technically it could be psychologically abusive to have to believe it and live life this way. But it was shown to me, it was done to me, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because they're putting that song right in my brain, right? Like, it comes in most people ignore. You're like shopping in Walmart, you don't pay attention to the music, or you're like, oh my God, here's a great song, but it's not deep into your brain. In my case, and this is not schizophrenia, because I wonder about people who are deemed schizophrenics, but it is as if somebody they want you to hear them, we're going to send a message. So anyway, it's a whole weird, bizarre thing, but how offensive is it for people to keep saying, well, you must be mentally ill, when they are actually antagonizing you to death? Thank you for that word. Haven't used that in a while. But say you had a lot of people who swarm your life, and it can be done. There are rings of people who will actually set up house in a new development. Oh, we're all going to buy a bunch of homes in this area, Bradenton, let's say. Say there's a major criminal family ring or rings in Bradenton, Florida. We'll just go with it. Or Gainesville, Florida. Or even Delaware, I guess. And they operate in different ways so as to antagonize anyone who doesn't toe the line, or anyone. They prize certain personalities and traits. So if you are more introverted and studious, but you're not devious enough, then they won't prize you. They kind of prize, or they want to break up families who might seem to them like royal. Say someone out there looked at my dad and mom, and they would see that my dad had certain traits. And they might see that he was part of more of a royal bloodline, if you will. I never even thought this way, because it's like, but he had certain traits that could look like Queen Elizabeth's, grandsons or whatever, or son, Prince Charles, what have you. Maybe he kind of resembled sometimes, or things worked out for my dad. They kind of worked out. And he had a certain personality, and for some reason it worked. He kind of got lucky. He worked hard, but he kind of got lucky in that regard, that things worked out. Ish. He showed up to work every day. He didn't hate it so much that he had to leave. You know what I mean? So he was able to toe the line. But some other people who aren't that fabulous, I guess, they would assume they weren't that fabulous. That's the thing. It's based on self-hate. They would know they weren't as great, but they had certain skills. We're going to go in and wedge, kind of create a rift here and separate out Mr. Royalty, I guess, from his family that he created. And we're going to steal that little royal bloodline and cook brisket every Christmas and really have fun with this game. Some people actually will play with words and have fun with a certain kind of game for the rest of their lives, because they are actually part of criminal rings. Even if they operate financially as legally as possible, they might actually be mentally incredibly damaging as a people to other people who are just trying to live their lives. I'm one of those people who was just trying to figure out how to live, and just like, why, I couldn't, anyway. So that's a long story short. Whatever the beer tasting thing was, it could have been orchestrated and scheduled. People, there are event planners and everything. So whoever planned that event might have done it on purpose to either show something or play a game or what have you. So it's people who are into event planning, this seems like everyday business to them. To me, it's like I'm too far removed from the event planning world that I would, or I wouldn't assume it would be about me, but that is whack stuff, whatever was going on at Cosmic Cafe. And then whatever that brain thing is, Jen was able to say something that totally scrambled. It's like in the air. I wish I could explain it. People in the field of psychology would probably vehemently say, but they don't know everything. Psychology changes every year. They get new information, they learn themselves. They have to learn themselves what's going on. And then they update their DSM or what have you, the big book of all the diagnoses or disorders. What if all of that could be burned? Because mental illnesses are caused by bullies. Okay, have a great day, and thank you so much.